Welcome, Hawk fans. Welcome to another episode of Hawk Talk. I am your host, Colin Cole, and I am joined by my resident guest host, the 2-year all conference right tackle, 3-year starter under Kirk Ferentz's regime, uh, the luxury real estate mogul, of course, out of Chicago, the Windy City, Mr. David Porter. David, thank you for joining me today, my friend.
What's going on, dude? How you doing today?
Oh man, you know what I say? It's another day in paradise. And speaking of Chicago, that's where the Hawks' opponent will be coming down from, probably taking a drive down what's that stretch of road coming from Chicago down to Iowa City?
88.
Yeah, they'll be probably coming down 88 this upcoming
88 to
weekend
80.
from Chicago. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
so yep, right down into Iowa City, about a 3.5, 4 hour drive for those Wildcats coming in for the matchup against the Hawkeyes. Now, as we know, it's been a bit of a difficult run this far this season. The Hawks are now sitting at 3-4, but the Northwestern Wildcats are actually sitting at 1-5 with losses to Duke. Well, and before I even jump to that, they actually have their one win in their season opener against Nebraska. That was a 31-28 comeback from behind win out in Dublin, Ohio, which was a huge game for both programs. They ended up winning that in comeback fashion, like I mentioned. But after that, I think all the emotion was drained out of that program because they went on to lose to Duke, Southern Illinois, and Miami. Miami of Ohio, not University of Miami, but Miami of Ohio, all back to back. Those were some close games, winning by those teams won by a little bit over a touchdown. Miami of Ohio, that was a close one, 17-14. But yeah, they have lost every game since. The game they played last week against Maryland at Maryland, that was a close one, man. That was a real close one. They actually had a lead heading into half. They were up 17-10 at the half, but they weren't able to hold off that Maryland offense who was being run by their backup quarterback. So it was a bit of a difficult week for them. It's been a bit of a difficult season for them. However, they are not necessarily a bad outfit. I mean, I watched a lot of the games. I watched that Penn State game. I watched the game they played last week against Maryland, and that was a really good game. And they actually have some really good playmakers on both sides of the ball, but specifically on the offensive side. Let me get that part up. Yeah, so they are led by quarterback Ryan Helinski. He actually has gone 141 for 200. I'm sorry. He's gone 141 completions for 244 attempts for 1,576 total yards, 6 touchdowns. But unfortunately, he's got a bit of a turnover bug. Has had 6 interceptions to his credit as well this season. He has been supplanted at times by Brendan Sullivan, who came in and spelled him. He's gone for 29 for 41 yards for a total of 257 yards. I'm sorry, 29 for 41 attempts and 257 yards, 2 touchdowns and 2 interceptions to his credit as well. The offense is actually run by Helinski, but about 40% of the offense is Evan Hull, who is their starting running back. He has 125 carries on the season for 547 total yards, 3 touchdowns, but he's also a major game player, playmaker in the passing game is Evan Hull, who also has 40 receptions for 436 total yards, which he has about a 10.9% average on his receptions. He had a long of 45 yards and has 2 touchdowns receiving. Their receiving core is led by Malik Washington. He has 40 catches on the season for 448 yards and 1 touchdown. Donnie Navarro the third, he's got 28 receptions for 224 yards and 2 touchdowns. Bryce Kurtz has 13 receptions. Thomas Gordon and then Marshall Lang are 2 tight ends that are main contributors. Both have 12 receptions apiece, neither of which have a touchdown currently. But they have a well-rounded offense. Like I mentioned, Evan Hull is responsible for about 80%. I'm sorry, 40%. What am I doing today? He's responsible for about 40% of what their offense is, and has been a tremendous playmaker for this team. So, David, Going into this upcoming Saturday's Saturday's game. Um, what do what are some of the key factors that the Hawks have to look at defensively, looking at this Northwestern offense?
Well, defensively, we need to just go out there and play our game, right? We know that we're going to get opportunities with Zelensky throwing the ball. All right, they're going to throw the ball a lot. The running game is it's okay. It's not as strong as their passing game. This the strength of their offense is their passing game. So Zelensky, he's prone to throwing interceptions. What do we? I think they're what 6, 7 games in. He's thrown at least. He's averaging about 1 interception a game. I think with our defense, with the pressure that our D line can put on him, we're going to see more overthrows. You're going to see some tip balls and the ball hogs back there in that secondary. They're going to do what they do. They're going to grab the ball in the air, and hopefully you get a chance to do something with it. That's really what our defense I see happening with our defense, especially against this offense. Now, that's not to say that this offense is not going to put up a fight. They're good. They are out there. They have scholarship athletes as well. So they're going to come out there. They're going to put up a fight. If they get going, and it gets later in the game, and they're still in it, and they have some time to come back to get some momentum. They have shown, especially against us, that they can actually win. They can close out a game against us. But I'm not expecting that, especially after the way we played against OSU. That defense, even though it doesn't show it on the stats with the 54 points that they gave up against OSU or get OSU put up, they played really well. And I think that they deserve to actually go out here and take control of this game. And they deserve more credit than what they're getting for the amount of effort that they put out pretty much all season. So these guys and those kids, I should say these kids that are on our defense, they've done a tremendous job all season long of holding it up and being got an integral part of our entire team, actually the leaders of our team. The defense is just, I keep saying it, I think they're better this year than what they were last year. And with this Northwestern team, I think they play really well into our defense's hands as far as being able to get tips and overthrows, get interceptions, get pressures. Maybe Joe Evans comes around again with one of those TEs and pops Zelensky right in the chest like he did CJ Stroud. We get a nice little scoop and score again. But that's where I see with our defense. We're going to be stout against the run, especially against these guys. I just think their O-line just isn't as good as an offensive line that we've seen in the past. They're much better at pass blocking than they are at run blocking. So once we get that going, this defense will, I should say our defense, will take control of this game. As long as the offense, that's a big if for us these days, is able to put together some drives to give these guys some rest, much needed. Yeah. What are you seeing, man?
Well, I would concur with what you said so far. I think the number one factor defensively for the Hawks going into this matchup is being able to keep Zelensky in the Zelensky in the pocket. He has done damage in terms of being able to get out of the pocket and make plays with his feet, both with running the football as well as giving his receivers the opportunity to get open by eluding the pass rush. So forcing him to be in the pocket as well as doing the best to take away Evan Hull in that run game will definitely dictate what the way that this game goes. So those two guys are going to be the key factors. You know, they're obviously their offense in a nutshell. And it's going to be a huge task, you know, specifically with Malik Washington, who leads the team in receiving with reception. So it's going to be a task. It's not going to be easy whatsoever. And
is
then
Malik a wide receiver?
Yes, wide receiver.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense. All right.
So flipping over on the other side, we talked a little bit in the last show about the possibility of a quarterback controversy. A little bit of a shakeup. We know that Alex Padilla came into the game in the start of the second half against Ohio State, and so this week in practice. They haven't named a starter at this point. I know that you said that you feel that Spencer will remain the starter and Alex may get an opportunity at some point during the game. That has yet to be seen. Obviously, we'll find out on Saturday. That being said, where does this offense go, David? I mean, we talked about it in the last show, man. And I was just looking at the stats. I'll give them to you guys right now. Our leading receiver in the passing game.
Wow.
What? Let's go right there. Let's
What?
go.
They
Go right
were
there.
talking about this offense.
Leading
You know how I feel.
receiver
I'm an
in our
offensive guy. You
passing
know how it
game
hurts me.
is our tight
I
end
think you
Sam
take
LaPorta.
pleasure in all of this.
What are we not talking football? What's happening?
We are. It's painful to talk about this offense. You know how much it hurts me.
Like I mentioned in the last show, Sam LaPorta is the leading receiver, 36 receptions with 334 total yards, long of 42, but he actually has no touchdowns on the season currently. Luke Lachey is the second leading receiver. He's not in receiving number, not in receiving catches, but in yardage, he actually has 163 total yards in that regard. And then he actually has a touchdown. From there, Arlen Bruce has 15 receptions for 158 total yards and 1 touchdown. Nico Reganey, 14 receptions for 157 total yards. And from there, it's kind of a couple of single digits. LaShawn Williams at 5, Brody Brecht at 4, Gavin Williams at 6, Alec Wick at 2, so on and so forth down the roster. So what we look at this game, it is homecoming week, and what do we look at, David, in terms of how this offense, how do they find their footing, and what is the game plan Brian Ferentz is putting together against his Northwestern defense?
Well, your guess is as good as mine. I'm going to put that out there, and everybody else in Hawkeye Nation, we're all just, we're hoping and praying that we see some things that make sense. But so far this season, our prayers haven't been answered. I just haven't. You're asking me to like come up with an answer like this that would be logical. I just don't understand how I'm going to do. Well, let me do the opposite. Well, I'm going to say I would hope. I'm going to say if I were looking at this whole thing, what I would do. I can't tell you what Brian would do because my mind doesn't work like that. If I were looking at this offense, I would hope we would see Alex Padilla come in as starter. All right. He comes in there, he gets going, he's been practicing with the ones all week. We know we don't have ones against ones during the season normally. It's usually going against your special team players. All right. So this is a time where he should be able to go out there, get his right reads, know where his progressions are going to be, so he can understand the mechanics that he's going to actually have to use when he's actually in the game. And going against the scout team with his first team offense, he should be able to get his timing down. So that way, when you go out there in the game and you're with the first team offense, your timing is where it needs to be. That also works with the running back. So the way that the quarterback, his cadence, the way he receives the ball from the center, the way he hands the ball off, all of that stuff is just a little different when you bring in a different person. All of us are not created equal. We're not the same. We do things just a little different. So it takes the entire offense being in continuity for this to work. And it starts with starts with the center, passing the ball back or hiking the ball back to the quarterback. That said, I'm hoping we get the running game going, especially with this young offensive line that we have. They really need to get their run fits. That will actually help open up the pass game, get that run game established, get LaShawn Williams back there, get him, ready to go and just freaking toting that rock and getting that offensive line back there so they can start firing off on people, as opposed to like when you're young, like these guys are on the O-line, being in pass blocking. Right there, these guys are doing more of the receiving because they don't really have their punch yet. They haven't figured that out. And the twist and the blitzes that Northwestern does on defense, that can be quite confusing, especially in the passing game. And as we've seen, our tackles struggle, and our guards, our center too. They all struggle with these different pass rushes that we've seen throughout this year. So I'm hoping we get the running game going, and by doing that, will help us get some play action passes going, maybe some naked, some boots, things of that nature, so that we can get our passing game going. That's what I would hope. If we're going to see it, you know, we don't. I don't know. I don't know at this point.
Well, Iowa Hawkeye offense is predicated on the outside zone stretch scheme. Last week I saw some gap trap, which is guard pull, center guard tackle down, guard pull. Saw some of that last week. I feel as though starting with establishing the running game has always been the number one way to get this offense going. Getting these five guys up front to start really just getting downhill, firing off, getting guys moving off the line of scrimmage is going to be the first and foremost focus of what this offense needs to do. Regardless of who is taking the snap from center, that has to be figured out, and that has to be a point of focus this week in practice, as well as getting the ball out on the edge. And regardless of who's taking the snap from under center, and regardless of who's taking the ball from that quarterback, that individual who's running the ball, we need some downhill running. They need those, like you've mentioned throughout the season, we need those guys on the backside to stick, as well as those guys on the front side to stick on their blocks. And I feel like this offense can definitely take advantage of what Northwestern has done thus far this season. So it's going to be a tough matchup no matter how we look at it. But I do feel like we have to give the edge to the Hawkeyes due to the fact that they have played some explosive I should say Northwestern has given up some explosive plays and explosive games against some teams that are not necessarily to the caliber of what either team.
I thought you were going to say we have an explosive offense. I was like, whoa, hold on.
The tongue was
like early. Like,
what change happened? On you there. Got to move it around on you there.
Like, we got an explosive defense. Yeah, so we got that. All right.
I didn't say that. That didn't come out of my mouth, though. Those weren't the words that were coming out of my mouth. Moving right along, this is rather interesting, David. I saw, looking at some of the stuff heading into this game, I saw one of the headlines, which was it was an interesting headline, and it had me thinking, man, this is wild in my regards. This matchup that we're getting ready to watch on Saturday between Northwestern and Iowa is actually, it could be has the capacity, is currently low. It is actually currently looked at as being opening up as the lowest over under in college football history currently. And what that means is that if it holds, it will be the lowest game total in college football history. The over under is 31.5 points. And if it holds, it will be the lowest game total in college football history. So the specialists that look at this type of stuff looked at the matchup, and they came up with an over under of 31.5 points, which, like I said, would be the lowest in college football history of them taking this statistic. So interesting fact, David. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah.
Any thoughts?
We're making a lot of history this season, aren't we? Holy smokes. Wow. Yeah, it's that is very indicative of where we are as a program right now, especially on the offensive side of the ball. Our defense has been more than their fair share, I'm going to say. I know we heard that's football, but that's just not the kind of football that I'm used to seeing at Iowa. And that wasn't the kind of football that we played when we were there. And that's not the kind of football that I really expected at all at Iowa. So that kind of fell on deaf ears for me. and it really went over like a lead balloon. And boy, that stat here with us not being 31 and a half points. Oh boy. Yeah,
Um,
that one, that's just ugly.
yeah,
Last week we gave up what 54 points to Ohio State. That was our worst
the highest
defensive
total.
performance in,
Yep.
yeah, that's the worst one in the Kirk's history at
Yep.
Iowa.
Yep.
We're clear regression here.
Yeah, so they in this article it goes on to say last year's UConn UMass game. Um, they're comparing this game to that game, saying that it's must watch.
Who? Oh my
UConn played
God.
UMass. They're comparing it in this article. They're talking about those two and how the purpose of watching the game was strictly to see how bad the potential of the worst college football game of all time. That's what
They're
they
calling the
said. That's what they said in this article, that this has the potential of being one of the worst college football games of all time. I hate that they just completely
of all time.
it is
Of
completely
all time.
completely being disrespectful. Just complete disrespect, man.
We're being compared to UConn and UMass.
Completely.
Oh my God.
So regardless of what's being headlined in this game, the Hawks have an opportunity to go ahead and get things figured out between how and who is going to be the starter and if they're going to go to a two quarterback type of situation or they're going to continue down this road, man. And they definitely
Know
have
what
a
it
lot of
is.
yeah, they have a lot of questions. They have a lot of things they got to answer. Got a lot they got to deal with, and we'll see. So far, it's been difficult this season. At 3-4, we'll see where they go from here. The season is in a difficult spot because we don't know if they'll be able to amass enough wins to get into a bowl game. They definitely have an opportunity, David. But again, like we talked about before, where do they manufacture these W's? Because they have to play, like we mentioned, Halloween weekend at home against Northwestern, which we just talked about. But with 4 games after that at Purdue, Wisconsin at home, who I watched the film on them against Northwestern, and they just straight dominated Northwestern. They really made a statement in that win, playing under interim head coach Jim Leonard in that game against Northwestern. So they're going to be a tough match no matter how we look at it. And we are, like I mentioned, Purdue first. We know the history that this team has against Purdue at Minnesota and end the season against Nebraska at home. So manufacturing wins, man. Where does it come from?
I'm looking at the schedule right now, and I'm with you. I'm almost tossing my hands up. And I wish scratching my head, if I had any. But um, Northwestern's always a tough opponent against us. Like you said, when they played against Wisconsin, Wisconsin had that running game going. My goodness, they looked really good. They just imposed their will. And Purdue, we're actually at Purdue, and they have Charlie Jones and Tyrone Tracy. And before they even had those guys, they were tough against us. That was his name, David Bell from last year. Heck, this dude got drafted off this game with us, I would think. It's just it's going to be really tough sledding. Minnesota, they're not slouches either. None of these guys are slouches. Nebraska might be our easiest test. Not even those guys. This might be our easiest test coming up. Northwestern. Other than that, I mean, this is the second half of the season is really tough for these guys, and I just hope our defense holds up. And it's how it gets. We're then back into the season. All those nagging things that were there at the beginning of the season, they didn't get better as the season goes on because you're still hitting. You're still out there hitting and doing things, and you try to do less and try to do things so you can recover. But just in season, it's just not enough time. And
Yeah, that
man,
that brings to mind Terry Roberts, who's missed the last number of games with his injury, who's there trying to work back into the games. You know how it goes when you have stuff like that. It's just hard. It's difficult to really try to get back because you're constantly re-aggravating and re-injuring those injuries. So hopefully this we can hopefully this group can find itself this week. That's the biggest thing. If they can find themselves and get back on track, then the sky's the limit. You know, with the defense and special teams unit that they have, the sky's in the limit. Just got to manufacture first downs and touchdowns and go from there.
Yeah, that's what we got to do. But I just hope, like we said last week, I hope that these kids are actually, because I know we all forget, we talk about football all the time. So these guys are like professional athletes. These are just kids out here. I hope that these kids, and especially the seniors, God, Spencer, he's a senior too. Their last year, they go end on a high note, and they have some kind of pride in what they've done, especially on the offensive side. I'm hearing reports Arlen Bruce and a lot of those guys are starting to apologize for the defense on a regular basis. That's just not a great thing, especially not for those guys in that facility there. Yeah, this manufacturing wins. Going to be tough sledding, especially with the way we're going. And as Kirk said, he's not really going to make any assessments or make any changes until after the season. So I think we kind of know the course that we're headed on. And unless he does a complete about face and, got a complete opposition of what he's done the past, 22, 23 years, we kind of know what's ahead for us.
Yeah. Well, it has. we're at this breaking point in the season, and we've seen what everything can be done. We've seen both sides of the ball, all three phases of the ball. This is a group that can get it done. You just got to get it together. So we'll see. Saturday, 3:30, Kinnick Stadium, Duke Slater Field. What?
We got it. We got it.
Okay, yeah. So all those factors.
You don't believe me.
Looking forward to Saturday. No, absolutely. I'm going into this game looking for a dub. We just got to get those guys involved. You know, we got to mix it up and start getting those receivers and everybody involved, and and all good things will happen. Get Arlen going, get Nico Reganey going, and this sky's the limit for this offense. So just got to get it going. So with that, that's the show for the day. I appreciate you all for joining us. For David Porter, I'm Colin Cole. Make sure you guys click like, subscribe, all that good stuff, and appreciate your support. We'll keep the show going, keep it rolling throughout the season, all that good stuff. Again, thank you guys for joining us. God bless and go Hawks.
Go Hawks.